When Ben died, he made very little noise. It was the computers that alerted me, shrill alarms and the flashing lights. I hadn't even gotten out of my sleeping bag before my smartwatch had lit up with half a dozen messages about system failures. The situation didn't sink in until I was shaking an unresponsive Ben, white eyes rolling back into his skull, blood pooling in his ears like red jelly, viscosity, mass, no gravity. It made me nauseous to look at. HQ would later say Ben died from an aneurysm. 1 in a million, a freak death that just happened to occur on low Earth orbit. So what now? I asked, after all the panic had died down and the reality of my situation finally settled in. HQ sent me a rarely used or discussed document that outlined what I have to do. Bodies pose a unique threat in microgravity, it explained. All that order becomes disorder. What is solid turns to liquid. What is liquid turns to gas. First thing I needed to do was to put Ben's body somewhere that had no oxygen and was freezing cold. Somewhere he would pose no danger to himself or me. Isolated, but easily retrievable. The conclusion was obvious. I knew what they suggest before I even reached that part of the booklet. It happened so fast that Ben was still warm when I put him in the special bag designed to endure the vacuum of space. I kept expecting him to protest as I pulled at stiffening limbs and manipulated swelling joints. Every step of the process, every zip, every bit of Velcro, I had to remind myself he wasn't going to complain. It felt intimate, but it wasn't. Intimacy requires two people. By that point, Ben was just meat. The spacewalk itself was something else. The bag that surrounded Ben's body inflated in the vacuum, and I instinctively felt the urge to undo what I had done. There was a body in there, and bodies are meant to have so little between them and outer space. When I touched the bag, I could still feel him beneath the paper film material. The crease of an elbow, the bump of his nose. By the time I reached my destination, his body already felt brittle. Attaching him to the station was easy enough on a technical level. Leaving him there went against every instinct I had. After that, there was no pretending he was coming back. A day later, and I began to pack his things away. There was a catharsis in it that I found calming. I catalogued his belongings with thin detachment. Most of his things were dry and uninteresting. Photos of him with a dog, a copy of a Michael Shea book, a certificate of excellence from NASA that he received when he was 10. He discovered a comet, he told me during our first meeting. Backyard with a telescope. NASA let him name it and everything. That was how he knew he wanted to be an astronaut. Described it as a calling. Ben was like that, a real-life Boy Scout. In life, he had no edges. You'd think given our history we'd be close. 2 men selected based on extensive psychological profiling. Together we had simulated multiple missions to Mars, 2 on the ground and 1 in space. All of them highly secretive. An official mission to Mars was meant to be next, at which point the whole project would be made public. But the key to having 2 people work together alone for nearly an entire year isn't to find 2 guys who are best friends forever. It's finding people who want great for one another, neither hate nor love. 2 men who enjoy their own company but don't mind one another. Ben and I had become acquainted over all the time together, but it wasn't like we were brothers in arms. We worked so well precisely because there was no meat to the friendship, no stakes, nothing to argue over. To me, Ben was a nice guy, but that was all. I figured he was plain and simple all the way down. No dark secrets, no real problems to speak of. The journal changed that. It was taped to the inside of a panel of a computer at his workstation. He must have hidden it close to his fangs, somewhere out of sight, but easily retrievable. Frayed leaves and yellowed pages, like some ancient artifact. Last thing I expected to find on a space station. I almost mistook its leather cover for some sort of personal Bible. The sort of well-worn tome held up by a preacher making exclamations about the devil. But its insides were handwritten, and hardly in keeping with a Bible. Scribbles, shapes, phrases repeated and dissected. Some of it was even in binary. It seemed like the ravings of a child or a lunatic. I thought it was maybe a mindfulness exercise, empty-headed doodling to help him get his head straight during stressful moments. But that didn't explain what he'd hidden it, and why the numbers and pages seemed strangely organized. I don't know how to describe it exactly, except to say there was the vague impression that it meant something to the person who made it. Every last gram on a shuttle is accounted for. What you bring up with you, it can't be some random crap you want last minute. Ben would have had to clear the journal. I'm assuming he kept the contents secret. One look at what he had been writing, and NASA would have had him in psych eval before the end of the day. But the book's size and weight would have had to be logged and accounted for. It could not have gotten to the station by accident, so I knew immediately that Ben had wanted it for something. I studied it for over an hour, trying to figure out what it was. Flicking from one page to the next, glaring at rows of numbers, strange fractals, something that looked like a cross between an eye and a textbook drawing of an atom. Given the way his writing and art skills developed through the book, I began to suspect he had been adding to it since his childhood, which was just another layer to the growing mystery. I thought I was never going to get any insight into the book until about 3/4 of the way through, I came across yet another page filled with rows and rows of numbers. Only this time, one of the strings was underlined, and a single word had been scratched ragged and angry next to it. The only bit of English or any human language in all those pages. The only thing written in a way that could make sense to a living human. The word itself made me stop dead in my tracks. Made my blood run cold. One, 7, 0, 3, 1, 8, 0, 4, 2, 6, 3, 6. Aneurysm. The suspicion that came over me felt like a kind of madness. I told myself I had to be nuts when I checked the data from Ben's biomonitor, that I had to be crazy to even entertain the notion. But the information recorded by several different machines confirmed it. Ben's exact time of death was the 17th of March 2018, 4 hours, 26 minutes, and 36 seconds. I don't think I moved for a good 15 minutes after that. Just stared at the data as my mind worked its way around a giant, impossible realization. Ben knew he was going to die. Of course, I tried to rationalize this. Anyone would. I came up with half a dozen reasons he'd written what he had written. None of them were comforting, although they at least fit in with a more rational worldview. Take, for example, the idea that Ben had killed himself at that exact moment in time to meet some sort of prophecy he had scrawled days or even hours before. Was that a good thing? What did it mean for me? Ignore the logistical issues. What poison can be timed to the second? Let's just say that's what he did. That left the hair-raising question of why, and there was no comfortable answer that I could see. Of course, I went through that book with a fine-tooth comb, looking for any more clues. I wish I hadn't. I eventually found another word. This one, closer to the very end of the journal. Another date and timestamp. One that lay 6 weeks in the future. And another word scratched painfully onto the paper by a clumsy fist. 27041802636. Immolation. Permission denied. What about the station's integrity? No sign of any issue from external cameras. I can hear something banging on the hall. Nothing is visible on the cameras. That's why I need to go and take a look, I wrote. It's hard to argue with a computer. You can't shoot at a death glare. HQ could have easily arranged video calls, but really they wanted the distance. Made it easier to say no. Solo spacewalk is incredibly dangerous. Microphones in the station's hall are reporting nothing of concern. Usual impact from debris. Nothing that corroborates reports of external tapping. Permission for spacewalk is denied. I made no further response. But instead turned off the screen and wondered if they were being entirely truthful. The tapping sound coming and going over the last few days was unmistakable, even over all those wiring machines and motors. Space stations are loud. They even give us earplugs to handle it. But whatever was out there was somehow louder. Or perhaps, given the circumstances, I was just sensitive to the thought of something, anything out there. There was no denying it annoyed me. Just one of those sounds I found impossible to block out, like water dripping in a bathtub at 3 a.m. No sense of order, not on the surface level, but something maybe underneath. Some sense or reason. some kind of regularity that the brain detects and can't let go of. How could the microphones possibly miss it? Sleep was getting progressively difficult. At times I thought the station was under some kind of hidden stress. Materials freezing and warming in irregular ways. No atmosphere, no conduction of heat. Things get hot in the sun's rays. Objects warm and cool to both extremes. This is routine stuff for anything up in space, of course, but it didn't stop me thinking about all the ways the station was just a pile of metal that could come undone, could break and tear, bend and stretch, like watching the wing of your plane wobble during turbulence. It's an uncomfortable reminder that you're just a monkey on a fancy toy. And what if something had come loose? Something. Oh, at first I stuck to this notion strictly, asking myself, what if some antenna or strap or bit of metal had gotten loose and was banging against the hull? That would be bad, but of course that wasn't really what I was thinking. It's what I wrote to HQ about, over and over and over. But what was really on my mind was the thought that maybe, somehow, he had gotten loose. And of course that's not so silly, right? The specially designed bag he was in, the one that would vent any gases produced by decomposition while maintaining his body's integrity, was brand spanking new. Know how many times he had been tested? Never. Never, ever. Ben was the first, so of course it might come loose. Just because it's space-age technology doesn't mean it's sophisticated. He was strapped to the outside like a Christmas tree to the family sedan. Maybe, I wondered, one of the straps had broken and now he was stumping against the side every now and again. Never mind that there wasn't anything out there to prompt that kind of buffeting. No air, no wind. If he'd come loose, he'd just float a little further away. But something was making that noise, and I worried almost constantly that it was him. Only problem was, I had cameras, blots, and all of them, every single time, showed the exact same thing. The bag, barely changed from when I last saw it in person, is strapped firmly and securely to the station's hull. This should have reassured me. Should have. But it didn't. Something was out there, tapping at the hull. On and off. No pattern, no reason, no correlation. It came and went, seemingly choosing its moments to bother me the most. Sleep was difficult for multiple reasons. The tapping was bad enough, but lately my nightmares had taken a strange turn. Black, cold. In them I was trapped in a suffocating film. Freezing cold, non-stop agony. Fighting furiously to free myself was this black void of a nightmare. Like all deeply terrible dreams, it colored my thoughts for the rest of the day. And each time I had it, it got harder to shake. I tried to endure, compartmentalize, take my mental turmoil and put it in a box. Right, unhinged across the lid, and sit rocking back and forth, waiting for my rescue. And that was an option, a good one, but there was one little word that stopped me going the route of hunkering down and ignoring my own madness. Immolation. When HQ told me the date of the shuttle would reach me, I spent quite a bit of time wondering if this wasn't just some big experiment. The sheer coincidence of it all. The magnitude of it. They sent me the message and the subject line had 3 exclamation points. Like the communications officer on the other side couldn't wait to deliver good news for once. Let their professionalism slip. They finally arranged a shuttle to retrieve me after it was done dropping some guys off at the International Space Station. It was lucky to come so soon. A stroke of logistical genius allowed them to sneak Ben and me back without it being too conspicuous. I should be very thankful, they told me. But I was just stunned. The date matched the one Ben had written out. Factoring in travel time, I'd be entering Earth's atmosphere at the exact time the prophesied moment would come and go, ripe for an error. A misplaced heat pad, a mistimed thruster, something, anything to go wrong and leave me plunging to my death in a burning metal tube. Ripe for immolation. If it wasn't Ben out there tapping away, I wanted to know. I needed to know. I was a rational man, a skeptic. I did not believe the natural world would produce a man that could predict his own death down to the minute or the second. Nor did I believe he could predict mine. But I'm only an animal. I'm made of meat, vulnerable, a raw nerve in a world of jagged rocks, and I'm risk-averse. That word, immolation, not random, not chance. Up in the void, surrounded by pure oxygen, fire was a constant risk. Ben's little numbers loomed large in my mind. I had to make sure everything was in place. Had to make sure there were no errors. If it was a prediction, which I refused to accept at face value, then maybe I could take heart from it. What could Ben do in the face of an aneurysm? Nothing. But immolation, fire, an accident, that sort of thing could be avoided. Just so long as everything was in working order. Just so long as everything was where it was meant to be. What did HQ know? Cameras and remote operators. Not enough. No one else was in that tin can except me. Why even have humans in space if you wouldn't trust their instincts and judgments? I needed to know what was making that noise. I needed to get out there.